my training is on the back burner. My garage looks like a mess. My bike isn't even unpacked from the last weekend of racing that I did.
Yeah.
And my lawn looks bad. And I don't care. That's okay because I have something more important to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's like kind of how I view it. It's that I'm not going to be perfect all the time. And like you said, you know, I did great at Leadville this year and I want to go back next year. But I have to be like open to the fact that like I might not be able to. So yeah, my identity isn't wrapped up in the things I do, and it isn't wrapped up in the appearance that gets seen in the world. My identity comes down to like who I am as a child of God, and then also who I am to my family. And that's like the most important part.
What's going on, everybody? My name is JP, and I want to welcome you here to the Stable Cyclist Podcast, where we talk about bikes, life mentality, and when the occasion arises, of course, we will deep dive into mental health. Today, very exciting conversation on tap for you as TrainerRoad's Jonathan Lee is here, and as I'll explain as we get into the interview, Jonathan has a very important part to play in you being here listening to the Stable Cyclist today, because without him, none of this gets started. Now, before we get into the podcast, I want to remind you that the Stable Cyclist Podcast is brought to you by Flow Formulas. If you are training or preparing for a race or just wanting to fuel your activities right, then Flow Formulas should be in your bottles before, during, and after activity. They have products for all of those phases, and when you go to check out at flowformulas.com, you can use the code JohnPeter15 to get a discount on all those goodies. Also want to remind you or encourage you that if you're enjoying the podcast, the best way you can help us out is to share it with someone that you know who you think might like it. And it would also greatly help us if you go and on the audio platforms, give us a 5-star rating and review. And also, if you are watching on YouTube, to hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up button. All right, enough of all that. Let's get Jonathan Lee into the studio. Well, Jonathan Lee, welcome to the Stable Cyclist Podcast. We'll just start there, and welcome, man. This is good to have you.
Thanks, JP. Appreciate it, man. It's cool to jump on here. We've known each other for some time, kind of loosely, just like at a surface level. And then I saw you were doing this podcast. Very cool. So.
Yeah. Well, and part of the reason I wanted to have you on and just to talk about it out in the open, I was on the Successful Athlete podcast. That's how we know each other, back in the summer of 2021. And it was around maybe a year or even less than a year after I got diagnosed with bipolar, and it was the first time I had really talked about it publicly, and I got a lot of feedback from the cycling community, just how important the conversation was, and that was kind of the genesis moment of what I'm doing now, whether it's the podcast or the filmmaking stuff I'm doing, or just the business I'm running on the side when I'm not teaching. And so much of that was just because you gave me a chance to speak about it. And so I want this kind of full circle for me to be able to like have you back on and just, first of all, thank you for putting me in or giving me that position to share and see the power of sharing stories. And then also I just wanted to hear more of yours. So for real, thank you for being here to chat today.
Yeah, happy to do it, man. And thank you for having that conversation. I think it's a interesting space because on the one side we have like David Goggins figures, and we need a little bit of that sometimes, right? We all do. Yeah. And then on the other side, but I think the other side is often oppressed a touch, and we don't hear that in terms of like somebody being in touch with actually what's going on inside of them instead of just deciding what is going on inside of them.
Yep, for sure. So most people that will have clicked on this, if they don't follow my podcast, they will know your face and voice from the TrainerRoad Podcast, which is far-reaching and has been going on for a decade now. When did you get...
Over a decade, yeah. I think we're at 11 years, right around 11 years, which is crazy to think.
Yeah, because that means they see you as a media person at the end of the day, a media host or a personality, and that's not really necessarily who you are, or it's one of the facets of you. And so, like I said, I wanted to talk about like more of your story, and I guess we're going to go way further back, and I want to hear how you get into bikes. I know there's some motocross in there and some other things, but how do we find the bikes to where it's like, this is a freedom machine and I want to do something with this all the time?
Yeah, I think like most little kids, I rode bikes all around. We lived in a semi-rural neighborhood, one of those ones where houses are fairly spread out, and a bunch of kids, we all like to ride dirt bikes and do those sort of things. And just we played out in Nevada, it's Bureau of Land Management land that surrounded us everywhere. So it's, public land, and we just were public land kids. And we rode bikes like everybody else. And I just remember from riding BMX bikes as a kid, I had this friend named Paul Basagoitia, who a lot of people probably know, one of the legends in free ride mountain biking. He was also like a BMX champion as a little kid, and we had friends like Paul and all these other guys that were like incredibly good, and I was not good at it, but I had a lot of fun, and I just crashed all the time. Like I remember one time going over the bars and dropping down in an aqueduct and landing directly on my face and just completely busted nose, and like so many hard crashes. I broke my cheekbone at a skate park. Like I wasn't good on a bike, but I was good on a dirt bike. I shouldn't say good, but I was better at that, and that's what I enjoyed. After high school, I was really like, I loved motocross to the point where I was racing all the time, and like I really enjoyed it. And even like, had just like any other kid, like the dreams of like, oh, maybe I'd make this like a career and I go in that direction. But I was never good enough to actually have like a solid career or anything like that in the sport. So I'm glad I didn't pick that route. I went on a church mission for 2 years in Santiago, Chile. And then I came back and I was in school, and I was just missing 2 wheels, and I didn't have any money to afford a dirt bike.
Sure.
I had like a motorcycle for transportation, but I missed 2 wheels. So at some point, so I met my wife, we get married, we ended up moving back to Reno, Nevada, and it was actually part of our church. So I'm part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the funny thing about that church is that everybody within the congregation, almost everybody, gets what we call a calling or an assignment.
Yep.
And that's like what you give, and that's your volunteer focus during that timeline. And mine was to serve as an advisor to 12 to 13-year-old young men. The main leader of our congregation, Roger Mooney, he was an incredible guy. He was like this just extremely strong cyclist. And he one day said, the activity we're going to do this week is we're going to go and ride the Flume Trail. And I was like, cool, this is going to be great. Like I get to ride a bike, and I borrowed his wife's bike, and it was like a 4-mile sandy climb that ends up just like ramping up to like 10% in the sand. And I hated it. And I think Roger climbed it 4 times while I was like walking the bike. And I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. But then once we hit the descent, I was like, oh, this kind of feels like a dirt bike. Yeah. This is really fun. And that's that 2-wheel thing that I was missing, right then. That's when I was like, I'm going to pinch pennies while working my 3 jobs in college and all that stuff. And I'm just going to try to find a bike on like Facebook classifieds, but back then it was Craigslist, I guess.
Yeah.
Found a Giant Rain, and that was my first bike. Got stolen after a few months, replaced it. And I just, I loved it. And Roger was like my mentor, and he taught me all the basics of cycling, from riding in a group on the road. I found like a really cheap, like really bad, like down tube shifter road bike on Facebook classifieds, and I could ride with Roger, and he just took me under his wing and taught me everything. And that's, I think, how the bike started. And I was never like, motocross athletes are endurance athletes, but I was never a quote endurance athlete as a kid. I did motocross, ski racing, and like other normal kids sports, but something clicked about like the ability to push yourself and to see progress. And I just loved the iterative nature of it, and it just clicked for me.
Yeah. So during this time in college, what are you studying?
Yeah, I was a business major, and like minoring in graphic design, because at that point I also had like, even when I was in high school, I did like freelance design work, and that was like a thing that I really loved to do. And then in college, that was, even though I worked at like a Tommy Hilfiger store, I worked at a motorcycle shop, and I was doing design work on the side at that time just to get by. And then when we moved to Reno, I was working at a Kenneth Cole store and then doing design work on the side.
Sure.
Like,
yeah,
just doing whatever I could. But design was kind of like the main focus of what I wanted to do. And in that whole process, with a good friend, we started up a motocross graphics company while I was in college. And it was honestly like, it never became something gigantic or anything, but it was like, it actually had pretty impressive traction, really. And for what it was at the time and the scale that we were operating at, and we made some good advertisement deals that really ended up increasing its reach and getting a lot of people coming in. And it was like, to the point where I was like, man, I keep sitting here in class and I'm like learning about this stuff from a theoretical perspective, but I don't feel like I'm learning much. But meanwhile, anytime outside of class and I'm working on this business here, I feel like I'm learning a ton.
Yeah.
So I actually, at that time, we then started to also I had this dream of building, because when I started cycling, like Strava was revolutionary and it was new.
Yeah.
Like it was a totally new concept. This is around like 2012, right? Like 2011, 2012. And it was like so cool to be able to compare your times on a climb. And this opened up my mind to this whole concept of like, we can learn from each other. Cause I could see like what a different athlete was doing for his training. And I know that sounds like really obvious now, but back then it wasn't. Like, you couldn't see
back then. No.
Yeah. You couldn't see what anybody else was doing. You had no clue.
Yeah.
So I'd see some guy on a climb and I'd be like, oh, he's really fast. What sort of mileage is he doing? And I'd like kind of look into things and I'd try to learn from him because I was learning, and I had this dream to make something that was data driven for the sport of motocross that allowed people to learn from each other. And it was called Hot Lap. And we did this kind of like weird pseudo crowdfunding thing, because crowdfunding didn't exist back then, but it was like a competition to see if you could earn grants. And in that process and through advertisement, we got like a lot of traction. And I was trying to be a software engineer, and I'm not a software engineer. And like I built an alpha and it worked. And then we were talking to investors about investing, and we actually had like some interest, and even to the point of like not quite to term sheet point, but we had investors that were like ready to, if we were able to push it down the road. And my friend Nick and I were trying to get this thing off the ground. So I'm like in school, I've got this motocross graphics company. I'm trying to start Hot Lap and get it off the ground. And I remember just thinking like, school is a waste of my time right now for what I want to do. And I dropped out of college and put all my eggs into both of those baskets. And then at some point I put all my eggs into the Hot Lap basket. My friend and my partner, Jamie, that was taking over on like the graphics side, he was good to go with the graphics company. And then, that's when I met the guys at TrainerRoad throughout this whole process too, because they were getting this like indoor training thing off the ground locally in our same area. So it's just crazy to kind of see how the whole thing developed throughout all this. So.
Well, and I think that's where people want to, they're going to want me to dig in a little more. Like they are, the people that started TrainerRoad, they're in the same community you were in. So how do those paths cross beyond like, hey, we're at the same coffee shop or whatever?
I honestly think that was it. So it was an event that was at a coffee shop. It was like a startup event. Reno, these days I'm not really in touch with it, but definitely back in the day there was like this big like startup culture that was very much like, and it was kind of throughout our whole country. It was like a big focal point at that point, but like right around when social networks were exploding and everything else. But like in Reno, it was like a small but like healthy little group. And I think that I pitched Hot Lap, and Nate, Reed and Chad they were also, I think, going to present TrainerRoad after that. Yeah. So we presented, and I just really thought it was really cool what they were doing. And obviously I loved cycling too at that same time. And so, we got to know each other there. And when we got to know each other with Hot Lap, we were at a point where we were kind of like, you have to make a decision here. Like you have to take investment and bring people on, or you skip. So we got a software engineer lined up from Las Vegas, and we had like some opportunity to get funding and get it over to him. And he actually like started working on improving what I had built, and we were getting something going off the ground. But then it got to the point where we actually had competition on this idea, because we had been trying for about like 9 months to kind of get it off the ground. And our big bottleneck was we weren't engineers. Like we couldn't do that. Yeah. We were trying, but we were stuck. And somebody came up, and it was from the SoCal area. And I'm trying to even think of their name, and it's bad that I can't think of it, but, they became like a larger business, and they're very like, they're prominent in that sport and everything else. And they're focused more on data analytics, but at that time it was kind of like becoming clear that like, we really need to make this happen or else we're going to get beat. And yeah, we were just in like, keep in mind, I'm doing like freelance design work. I'm not getting paid a single penny from Hot Lap. I remember at one point, like I just came home and like the power was off, and I was like, yep, we didn't have money to pay the power bill. And like, we were just trying to get through, my wife and I. And then at some point Nate was like, hey, would you ever want to do some consulting for us? And like, I was like, oh my goodness, I can turn my power back on. That would be great. Yeah. So like, we like went through this process of working out what that would look like. And I started working with them. And with my partner, Nick, and I with Hot Lap, we kind of came to the conclusion. We were like, man, if we take investment from this, like we won't want to own anything from it. We could probably do it. Right. It's clear that we lack some skill and some knowledge. Like this might be pretty tough for us. So we decided that we were going to fold that up. Nick had some great opportunities on his side in the hospitality area. He's a marketer as well. He's a great guy and brilliant. And he was going in that direction. And then I had like this consulting thing with TrainerRoad while I figured out what was next. And it wasn't long until we made it to the point where I was actually like an employee of TrainerRoad. And at that point so it was Nate, Chad, and Reed. Those were the founders originally. Yeah. And then we had Alex, who was one of our customer support agents. And that was it. And then it was me. And then we hired on some more support agents at that point. And then we also had, I think we hired on an engineer called Travis and Lawrence right around the same time that I started some engineers. But man, it was just us. We like, I remember the first day I started working with them, like properly, we were in a co-working space, and it was crazy. It felt like to the, cause like they had just like done like Starbucks before, and it was wild. And then, fast forward to where we are now, and it's over 80 employees and athletes in over 150 countries. It's just really cool to look back at like the humble beginnings.
100%. So what were you consulting for originally? Like what did they bring you in to talk? Like what was your expertise other than like, hey, I'm kind of working on this stuff?
Yeah. Nate was like, you're really good at getting like eyeballs onto something and getting traction and building awareness. Like, sure. Because I had done that for my motocross graphics company. Then we had done that with Hot Lap. And like with Hot Lap, we didn't even have a product other than one that we could test internally, like a beta. And like we built a GPS that like was higher, like now, like we're seeing like GPSs come out with like 10 Hertz, right? With Garmin. And that's like, so we built like a 10 Hertz GPS. It was this big old brick with an Arduino board. And like, we built that out because we realized that like tracking with your phone wasn't quite high resolution enough. Sure. And then we had like built it out so that we had a platform that would map out your route and you could see your line choice. And that was the whole concept. Like if we could teach people to take better lines, it would be better. And like, we had this whole thing where we were trying to like build all of this out, but really the success of the whole thing wasn't the product. It was the fact that like we could get a lot of eyeballs on something like pretty quickly and build interest in it. So that's what I was brought on to do. And so the first thing I started doing was I was really focused on press and really focused on making sure that people knew about us. Because back then indoor training was like, nobody did it. No. Everybody hated it. Like you had rollers and that was it. Then there were these kinetic trainers that like people were like, yeah, I've heard they're super good, but why in the world would I spend money on a trainer? Yeah. And CompuTrainers were kind of the only point of reference for like this like structured training indoors. Yeah. And that was still within almost everybody. Like if you owned a CompuTrainer, like personally, you were like loaded and like weirdly obsessed. Whereas, it was usually in a studio format. So they like had this, and the same rings true today. Like TrainerRoad is a product company. Like everything is focused on the product. And they had this at that time like a revolutionary product that like you could train indoors. You didn't even need a smart trainer. They used virtual power to like figure it out. You didn't need a power meter. And it was this great product, but people just didn't know about it. So man, it was so different back then though. It was all about education, about devices and like power and how to pair them and how to train with power. And now that's just understood almost natively by, it seems like every cyclist, even the new ones.
Is that still your primary job today, or is it totally, obviously you're a host of this podcast that a ton of eyeballs see, but I feel like your job has kind of been like chameleon-like for whatever they've needed you to do. You just kind of figure out what to do. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. It's always been within the realm of marketing, of course.
Sure.
They've never been like, Jonathan, start coding, because I'd be useless at it. But yes, you do. And I think this is probably, a lot of people can relate to this. When you're building a company from the ground up, you wear a lot of hats, yes, because there's a lot of open seats, but then you also wear a lot of hats because your priorities or the way you go about things change constantly. So I think that we aren't really big on titles here, but I think my official title is communications director. But we have I've covered everything on there are times when I've been purely focused on PR, which back in the day that meant I remember flying to LA to road bike action and then sitting down with them to show them everything, or going to Denver and then meeting with a handful of media outlets there. And then it's at other points in time, it's been purely focused on developing all of the marketing product side of things. So that looks like all the language that we're using and making sure that it's consistent across the product. It's also, there's a lot of overlap, I guess, into the coaching side. So a bit outside of the marketing, because there have been, I think that maybe a misguided assumption of how we have managed our training at TrainerRoad over the years is that way back in the day that it was just Coach Chad designing everything and doing everything. And,
yes.
and to be clear, he did the vast majority of everything back in the day. But it was always this thing where we believed that there are principles that we follow. And then after that, we have a lot of different perspectives. Cause Nate, even though he's the CEO, he's great at basically everything, but great engineer, but he's also really has a keen understanding of training and physiology and everything else too.
Yes.
And that also extends to a lot of our engineers and our support staff and everybody else. So there's kind of a design by committee on the training side, but there have been times that that's almost all of my focus, or it's on content creation and content marketing, because that's the main way in which we market as a company, all the way to strategy and organization. There's been a lot. So it's, tons of hats over the years.
Yeah. As a marketing person, how much have you had to just, today what marketing is and communications with social media especially are so different from 10, 12 years ago. It seems like another lifetime when we think about, how we learned stuff back then. So what has that learning curve been like, and how much time have you had to always spend just figuring out what's next?
Yeah, man, it's like a vertical wall. I feel like it's in terms of the slope, and it's just never, it doesn't really slow down in that regard.
Right.
It just speeds up. So, back in the day, like I said, it was much more about education, about we needed to solve the problem of two problems mainly. It was people didn't understand why something like this would be helpful, but then they also didn't even understand how to make it happen. So what is a power meter? Why is power important? Indoor trainers, what do I need to get? Do I need to get this type of trainer? Do I need a speed sensor or cadence sensor, and understand? And then it's just all of that's understood. And it's so different now, because before you would be communicating all that messaging, and you would do it through magazines and through online publications, and you would get a review. And in that review, you would have to make sure that the process is very clearly communicated. And then it was also creating content that was effectively advertorial content, but you didn't create it. You would just say hey, you would pitch to a media outlet. I don't think you guys know this, but there's a lot of people that don't understand training with power. You could do an article on training with power, and that's going to get you a lot of views over the years, because this is the future of how people will train, which seems silly to say now, because it's very obvious, but back then it wasn't. So, and now the way that we consume our information is so different. It's all through scrolling, and it's all through really short, quick things. You have to grab attention because there's so many other things that are going on, and you can grab attention in a bunch of different ways. And for our brand, we try not to be alarmist, and instead what we try to do is we try to hit on specific needs that people have and try to solve those needs. But it's so much more concentrated now, whereas before you had a lot of space to be able to say something, and now you have to make sure that everything is perfectly distilled and that it's very high impact. And high impact means that you align with a need that they have that matters to them, and then you solve it in the most efficient way possible for them.
Yeah, in 15 seconds.
That's it. And if you don't make sure that that's established within the first 3 seconds, you lost them, and you won't be circulated. So it's really complicated. And I think that it's just constantly evolving, and with LLMs and how people get information now through that, I think that it's really probably going to catch a lot of companies off guard, in the sense that not understanding how an LLM gets the information and then is able to deliver that to somebody. It's all so rapidly changing. It's like never. Marketing is such an interesting. Your job looks entirely different than what it did 10 years ago.
Yeah. So we're going to dive in one more area with this. I want to hear, I think from 2019 to 2021, your job and what you all were doing at TrainerRoad probably went in like hyper warp speed, and maybe specifically in 2020 with the pandemic starting. Mm-hmm. How crazy did you experience growth? And how was it? Just put the seatbelt on or hang on for dear life while you're also trying to personally navigate a global pandemic?
Yeah. It was, so we're inherently a seasonal business, and that reduces every year over time as people start to understand what our business is. It's not just indoor training, but it's AI cycling coaching. And basically what we see is so it kind of looks like a sawtooth serrated blade that just keeps ratcheting up higher every year. If you're to look at like a growth rate, that's what a seasonal growth rate looks like. And what we saw when the pandemic hit was like, it was like double that growth for a short period of time. Now, when we saw that coming, like all of us, Nate brought everybody together, and Nate was kind of like, look, like we're going to get a ton of growth, but we should act like none of it has actually happened in terms of how we're spending money. And we should actually do the opposite. We should analyze every single penny that we spend as a company. And we're like a frugal company as is, but it was like analyze everything and cut everything that isn't necessary back, because we want to retain as many, we need to retain as many people if things go south. And so we need to drop that. And when I'd say people, it's like employees. And,
you did the complete opposite of most of the bike industry.
Yeah. And you might say that like in one respect, maybe if we had because we've never dumped a lot of money into marketing, that's not how the company is like functions. And, like the way that Nate views that, he's like, look, like we could dump a lot of money into marketing, but then we wouldn't be serving athletes better. Yeah. But if we dump a lot of money into our product, then we can serve athletes better. Yes. And that's like what they expect from us. Yes. So, we could have maybe spent a ton and really like grown even further, but we didn't.
You're also still here.
Yeah, exactly. And we battened down the hatches, and we kind of like had this perspective. We were like, we should be prepared for like all that spike in growth just to instantly disappear. And like once, people can ride their bikes outside again, and once everything happens, and it didn't happen just like that. It definitely dropped back down, of course. And then the growth rate continues. But the craziest part of the whole thing, I think through that time period, was just like, we felt like we had a need to help people. Nate is very pragmatic as a CEO. But at the same time, I think we all recognized the fact that like everyone was honestly like really scared. None of us knew what was going on at that time. And, so I remember it was a really productive rallying call for the whole company to go build this feature that was group workouts at that time. So everyone focused on this. We worked super hard, like tons of hours to get this feature out as soon as we could, that allowed people to like see each other and talk to each other and do the same workout at the same time. that feature, like really like for us, like it was almost like a temporary salve. It was like a sandbag in a flood, that you put there to help people. And it was a really fun time to like build that out and then to connect with people. So I do think it was like an explosion in growth for sure. But I think the biggest thing is it changed how people viewed cycling at that time. Yeah. There's so much bias and stigma against indoor training, and it still exists. But Zwift coming into the space, it has always, I think, helped TrainerRoad actually. A lot of people viewed us as being mutually exclusive. And now definitely with the integration that we have in place, I think people can see that they're actually complementary. Yeah. And it really just them coming into the space helped us grow because they made so many people get over the fear of training indoors and then introduce them to smart trainers. And it broke down all those education barriers that you had to do about like the equipment you'd need. And that really changed, I think, the sport. And meanwhile, our company was always moving more toward like the vision was never just to be like an indoor training tool. The vision was to like be able to get enough training data that we could actually train models on it and then recognize, let models recognize patterns that we can't recognize as humans. And maybe we can figure out cool new ways to train, and maybe we can figure out better ways and we can like measure things, make adjustments, and then measure the change. And then we can just ratchet it up and keep making people faster. So like, it was interesting because indoor training during the pandemic was everything and it benefited us. But then as time has gone on, I think that it's like the key has been making sure that people are understanding that we're not just that indoor training company. We're something bigger. Yeah,
100%. And so much of the realization that happened during the pandemic, I feel like because of having to be forced inside to train, is it became a wellness tool as much as like train for elite performance, because there was no elite performance to go train for. There was no racing. So it was just like, hey, we're all going to be healthier. And that's been really positive. And like you said, it got a lot of people, the Zwift and TrainerRoad got a lot of people involved in things and were complementary and in the ways that they could do that. So yeah, it's fascinating when I look back on that time period. Obviously my life was very sideways during that whole year, but when I get to talk to people about what it was and what they were going through, it's always interesting to just hear like, what you guys were doing there was very different and very intense. And like you said, kind of scary of like, what is this all going to look like in a year? And so for sure. What we haven't talked about yet is you are also a racer. Like you're not just some, people might think this is like a marketing nerd and like he knows how to start these startups, but like you are a legitimate racer, especially on the mountain bike. You have competed for national championships at the pointy end. You have ridden very well at Leadville multiple times, even if it wasn't the most fun. And
never is.
It never. Yeah, there's no air to breathe. But you are a very good mountain bike racer, and you are very competitive, and you like to do it. And obviously, with what you do, you have to put the training in to do that. But I also know from what you said earlier, like you're very involved with your church. You've had kind of these seasons in your life where you went to Chile, and that was before you were really doing stuff on a bike, but you had these mentorship time periods in your life. I know on social media you posted recently, you just finished a very intense 2 years serving as a deacon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, as a member of a bishopric. So a counselor in a bishopric. So a bishop is like the one that's responsible for a congregation, and he has counselors, 2 of them.
Gotcha. So you've had these very intense time periods where life has, by choice, by conviction, however we want to describe it, has pulled you away from your ability to like, hey, you can't go do Leadville every year. You have to do these other things. And I just want to hear, most of the people that listen to my podcast and most of the people who listen to your podcast are not people like Keegan. They're people just like you and me who are trying to navigate life as a dad, and I would guess most of your listenership is also male, just like mine.
If it's into bikes, that usually is what it is, unfortunately.
Yeah. So how have you navigated these times where you do want to go race Leadville, but you also know, like, I have this responsibility right here that I need to take care of, whether it's your job, whether it's your faith, and still, kept in touch with all of I need to be a healthy human as well. And like I said, I don't ask that to turn it into a TrainerRoad commercial, but on the bigger scale, like, how do you mentally handle, like, okay, I'm going to give up 2 years here because this is what I need to go do, and the racing will be there. So yeah, this is the real question I've been dying to ask you for years as I listen to your story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's never the same. I think that there's this concept that there's like a magic balance of time and priority that allows it just you to find like a stable plane. And I've never found that. So somebody might have. Let me know if you have, because I would really love to know about that, but I never have. I think you have to have your priorities in place and agreed upon beforehand, but then you also have to be understanding of the fact that there are times when your time allocation isn't going to directly reflect your priorities, but that's okay. That's the hard part, I think, for like my brain. I love to have everything organized into spreadsheets and everything into position, and I like everything to be predictable and follow a specific framework.
Yes, same.
Yeah, and when it doesn't, I feel as if my life spirals out of control, and it's tough to be able to manage that because I have to be a high output individual in our lives, just like all of us that have families and have all these other things. Like, you have to show up for your family, and you have to show up for the different responsibilities you have. And it's really hard to do that when you feel like you're failing in other areas. It's kind of, if I could like use a metaphor to describe this, the other day, my friend posted this picture, and he's a very busy CEO in Manhattan, is growing this company. And he also rides bikes. And he gets out for his morning ride in Central Park. And when he takes a video, his bar tape is just in tatters. It looks terrible. It's like hanging off. It's just terrible. And I sent him a message at first, and I was like, that bar tape, and we laughed about it. And then I stopped and I thought about it, and I'm like, wait a second, I'm seeing something there. And this is his bar tape. And what I ended up telling him, I was like, you know what? Your bar tape actually says something pretty important. Like, right now in your life, you have a list of priorities of things that need to get done. And even though James, my friend here, likes to have everything perfectly in line, just like me, he's allowing one to slip. Yeah. And he's consciously deciding that is less important than something that is more important right now. I used to pride myself on having an immaculate garage, an immaculate lawn, and having like the house was always like in perfect order, and when I felt like everything was clean, I just felt such immense satisfaction. But what I was doing was I was using all of that as like a veneer and as a way to convince myself that I had everything under control, right? If everything looked perfect, then it was fine. If it didn't look perfect, that was an indictment against myself. I wasn't good enough to be the person that stays on top of everything. And I remember reaching a point, it was once we had our second child, our first child was so easy, and like my wife and I would just like read a book, apply the principle, and it worked. And we're like, we're such good parents. This is easy. And then like we had our second child, and she's like crazy. She's like nothing, and read every book and apply, and nothing works, And it was in that time frame when I just realized, I was like, our lawn doesn't look good. And you know what? That's okay. Yeah. Because the one thing that I can say is that my wife was supported in putting the kids to bed this evening. And that's really important. And so now there's like these areas of my life that don't look perfectly manicured. And that doesn't mean that I just let them go completely. Right. That means that maybe next week is the week that I get to that thing. But this week, it's okay if it slips, because there's something that's more important today. Yeah. And that was like what the bar tape looked like to me. I was like, so James, good job. Like, that's awesome that your bar tape looks like that, because you have something that is more important right now that you're tending to. Yeah. And I think in this world of social media where we project the best parts of ourselves, that can become an increasingly heavy pressure for people, especially in caretaker positions of others, where you feel like you need to have everything together and every piece of everything perfectly in line. And I just have learned, at least for myself, that that isn't productive for me. And instead I need to focus on what's most important. And that, I think, goes into how I manage everything, with my calling in the church and serving with the bishopric, which I still am in that actually now, just with a different bishop in place. It's all volunteer callings, but we're called to the work. And then, I operate from a perspective that if I say yes and I put God in a high priority in my life, that he'll help me take care of the other pieces. And I do think that happens. I've witnessed that in my life. But I think it's really important that you have to put the most important things first, which for me is my family and God. And right now we're in a situation where, like with TrainerRoad, like I'm going to be working like all weekend. And I worked from like 6 yesterday to around 11 at night. And like, that's just how it goes sometimes. So as a result, like my training is on the back burner. My garage looks like a mess. My bike isn't even unpacked from the last weekend of racing that I did. And my lawn looks bad. And I don't care. That's okay, because I have something more important to do. So, I mean, that's like kind of how I view it. It's that I'm not going to be perfect all the time. And like you said, I did great at Leadville this year and I want to go back next year. But I have to be like open to the fact that like I might not be able to. So my identity isn't wrapped up in the things I do, and it isn't wrapped up in the appearance that gets seen in the world. My identity comes down to like who I am as a child of God, and then also who I am to my family. And that's like the most important part.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And as a dad with a very hectic job who just finished a soccer season coaching, I look across where I'm sitting at my studio area, and it looks like a bomb went off that hasn't moved since Gravel World. And I can see a pile of laundry that is like 3 weeks old in my riding area. And it's just, we're going to start taking care of that now because soccer's done. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yep, that's right. It's okay to have that mess,
Yeah. I think I would be remiss without asking, you talk a lot about your friendship with Keegan. I don't want any Keegan stories, but I think everybody wants to know how you two met and how you've gotten to be what seems like friends.
Yeah, very close friends. We actually met at Interbike probably back around 2012, 2013 maybe, and we were in the Wahoo booth, I think, because TrainerRoad, we've never done booths. Like, our product doesn't show well. Like, it's not like we can show you how your FTP is going to increase. We could make something up, but that wouldn't be honest. So so we were in the Wahoo booth, and while I was there, I can't remember the name of the product. There was a power meter company, and you could calibrate it yourself by filling up bags with water. I know this sounds really weird, but like the power meter space way back in the day was like, it was a bit Wild West, So, and it was a company, I believe, from Israel, and they had contacted Sophia, and they were kind of like, hey, like, would you be the resident athlete that's like there talking about the product to people? And Sophia, for people that don't know, number one, she's like one of the most kind. The world totally misunderstands her because of really like the Call of a Lifetime series that was first made that year. And she is one of the most kind, helpful, and selfless people, who's also like, she is the smartest person I know. She's so professional. She's a great communicator. So they were smart to like have her there as the athlete that was going to be talking about it. And she was like, oh, well, my boyfriend is going to be there, Keegan. Can he, because he needs to find sponsorship for the coming year. So could he be in the booth? And they said, sure, whatever, like bring your boyfriend along. And I saw them across the way, and I recognized Keegan and Sophia from like, I guess Sophia was like racing cyclocross at that point. She just kind of, it's like her main focus. And I had recognized Keegan as well. And I just went over and I was like, hey, like, super good to meet you guys. First of all, like, my name's Jonathan. I'm just a big fan of what you guys do. And then we started chatting. and Keegan and I like kind of like hit it off, like really similar mindset. And then I guess afterward, and when like the day was done, because we would chat with each other, then go back to doing what we were doing and chat with each other. And then when I guess we were done, Sophia was like, "Ooh, you have a fanboy, Keegan," and which is really funny. And Keegan was like, "I don't know, he seems like a cool guy." And then ever since then, we've just become really close friends. We both have like Keegan is definitely, I think the thing that stands out the most is his discipline. Yeah. I don't think it's really, people probably want to make it a bit more complex. Like, yes, he also his mom was a D1 swimmer. His dad was an incredible endurance athlete too. So yes, he has like that. But the main thing I think in my mind is that guy's head. He is so disciplined, and he's able to say no to the things that will not make him faster at a level that most people just simply aren't. And he's also able to say yes to the things that he needs to do that are really hard, painful, inconvenient, don't show any immediate return. He's just very, very disciplined. And we kind of have a similar mindset in that regard. And we just hit it off, and we're, throughout his career, we've always maintained a really our friendship. And then also we work together to be able to help him and guide him and, make right decisions and everything else too. And he does the same for me. We're, just really close friends. When you get older, you don't really have a lot of quote best friends, and that's just kind of how it goes when you become an old guy, I guess. But we're very close. So he's an impressive person. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful. All right. We've been talking a lot of serious stuff. Yeah. And we always close things out with what has become not rapid fire, but random fire here at the end.
I like it.
So, because it's not necessarily quick, but we're going to give out a lot of questions here. So, cool. The first question that we're going to talk about is that you and I are going to go on a long ride. And maybe we'll ride our mountain bikes on the gravel, or maybe we're just going on a long ride. And at some point, we're going to run out of fuel on this ride. And we're going to stop at a gas station to fuel up. But this is not like a real sexy, beautiful gas station with all kinds of food options. This is rural.
This isn't Buc-ee's.
Yeah. Or whatever regional you've got. This is like wood paneling on the walls and probably some taxidermy and What are you getting to eat and drink to get us home?
So number one choice typically when I hit a gas station, because I drink all my carbs usually and take in some gels too, is I'm looking for something salty, some sort of change. Sure. Can't beat classic Lay's potato chips. Real good.
Yep.
But the fat content does mean that your gut's probably going to be messed up if you have to keep up a high carb intake thereafter. So in some cases, what I just go for is coconut crumb donuts or one of those Hostess cherry pies. Those are the three things that I love the most. Since it's not a fancy gas station, they probably don't have Gator Light Lime Cucumber, but that's the nectar of the gods. That stuff is amazing. So since they don't have that, I'm probably just going to get some basic Gatorade, or I'm just going to go with some water. I love sparkling water and I drink a lot of carbs on the bike, but I just am not a soda fan.
Okay.
Just not a big fan of it. So fair. I'll probably skip a Coke and I'll just get Gatorade and or water.
All right. When you are out training on the roads around where you live, or when you're on the trainer yourself, do you have music on?
Always.
Okay.
Yeah. And I even prefer music to shows or watching anything. And if I'm using Zwift or if I'm not, I always have music.
What's on the Jonathan Lee Spotify playlist while we're riding?
It is broad. It's wide ranging. So actually, Jono Grant from Above and Beyond, they do something called group therapy every week, which is a live set that they kind of put together, or more like a track list that they put together. Yeah. And that's a really cool one. It's almost like a podcast that gets updated every week. It's a fresh playlist. I like electronic music, house music and that sort of stuff to listen to. If it's kind of those longer days where it's, or sweet spot tempo, endurance, that sort of pace. Yeah. When it goes up more. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you have Joe Gettle calls it the go to the well mix. Like
Yeah,
on a really
yeah.
hard day.
Yeah, when it gets like higher intensity, I usually go toward like sometimes the pop punk stuff from what we grew up with, everything from like The Used to like Thrice to like everything from back in the day. Huge, obviously, like Blink-182 fan, like everybody from my generation. But then if it gets like harder in some cases, then I lean more toward like that's when we're gonna go and find like on the old school side a bit more like some Atreyu and something like that coming in, but more likely to pull something like I don't know, something a bit more modern. So it's like that modern kind of like metal punk, pop punk, metal weird hybrid that's out there is good, man. There's a lot of stuff in there. So if the intensity goes up, the scale goes from electronic to metal, and like it carries on and goes that way.
It's very similar.
On the longest days, though, then there's country that comes in, and like I just like putting country on and
you
going
and
to
Ian
that.
Boswell, okay.
Yeah, man. So it's like truthfully, like it's a bit loose. It's all over the place.
All good, all good. If you had just one song, as we just steadily build the Stable Cyclist guest song playlist, if you had one song only to listen to, what are you gonna pick?
I'm going to pull open my Spotify really quick, and this might not make for good radio as I kind of like find this and see what it is, but I'm just going to look through.
Well, I thought as you were listing off those old bands, you were going to list off, mention that Yellow Card just put out a new album, and all of us that are of this age, we were just like stoked out of our minds, and I also felt very old all of a sudden, so.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Artist in the Ambulance by Thrice.
That's a banger. Yes.
That might be good. Or Strung Out, Exhumation of Virginia Madison might be another one that one like marked my childhood, that like album. That was incredible when that came out. I say childhood, I think I was right around the senior in high school or something, but those two I would say are probably it.
When you mentioned Thrice earlier, and like that that was the song that I was like, he's got to be talking about this song and not like some of the newer good but weird stuff that doesn't really vibe well on the bike.
No, Artist in the Ambulance is perfect. The other stuff is a bit dramatic and kind of like a downbeat. So, but like Artist in the Ambulance is so good, man. And that song itself is such a good one. So yeah, I think I'd add that one. There's another one too, though, that for like endurance work, especially where we live, kind of up by the mountains and stuff. There's one called, or Ben Bomer is an electronic artist, and there's a song called Autumn that like is such a good, and then one called Rust. Those two songs are such good. And if you just use Spotify and hit radio on those ones, you're going to have like the best like zone 2, like chilled zone 2, like listening ever. So
I cannot wait to try that.
That's good.
Yeah, so there's one more song question we have been asking of late, and that is, I think you've stated you would never do Unbound under any circumstances, but
I really don't want to. I think that's like...
That's okay. Yeah. You can come there as a media personality, like that's why I go there now. So if we were to have a karaoke night. Sorry, I get killed for my pronunciation of it. If we have a karaoke night at Unbound with all the people, what song does one Jonathan Lee sing for everyone?
Let me think about this.
It can be something fun. Like Justin McQuarrie was like, I'm going to sing The Man from Waco, which is the most like country song you've ever heard.
I know that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, like, I think the ones, I'm always really bad with remembering lyrics. But like one of the artists that I always like listen to and actually can remember some of the lyrics on, but the problem is it would sound nothing like him, is Coulter Wall. I don't know if anybody has heard him, but he's like, when at the age of 18, it sounded like he had smoked cigarettes for 90 years. So
that makes the best singing voice. So
yeah, he had a great voice on it. There's a song that he has called Bald Butte. And I'm not a good singer though, but that's like one of my favorite ones. And when I'm riding, that one comes along and I'm like singing that one out in my head. So
got it. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Very important question. Sometimes I forget to ask this and I get crushed in DMs afterwards for it. Are you into Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Oh, Lord of the Rings over Harry Potter, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
100%.
Okay.
I read the Lord of the Rings series as a kid in school, and then I also read the Harry Potter series. And sorry, Harry Potter fans, but I think I got to like the fourth book, and then when I realized that it was the same thing, she was just making it longer every time. I was like, I'm out. I'm not getting taken advantage of anymore. There's nothing novel here. It's the same thing every year. So like somebody who seems good is actually going to be bad and taken over by Voldemort. And it didn't work for me, man. So, but my son loves it. He's like huge Harry Potter fan, voracious reader, loves the whole thing, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Lord of the Rings. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use of the word voracious. I love it.
Yeah, that's him. His vocabulary is impressive. So
yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. I'm a Wahoo athlete. They work with me on some of my advocacy stuff. So this question I say as what's on your Wahoo, but if you use a Garmin or whatever, you can name drop that. It won't hurt my feelings. But when you're riding, what is on your primary screen? And I don't want to hear how you flip through to different ones. Like if you only get one, what's on it?
Yeah. So I use anything from, I have a Garmin 1050, I have the Hammerhead Crew 3. Then I don't think I have the new Wahoo, but I have like, what is it, the Roam or whatever. At work here, we have to have like all the different head units for testing.
Yeah.
I don't really ride much. I just train. I train a lot, but I rarely ride. So my primary screen has target power.
Yep.
It has time to go for the interval. It has 10-second power. Outside, I like using 10-second power.
Yeah.
One thing that I think somebody's going to be like, that's terrible. Like, what happens when you have to do like a short 15-second effort? A good head unit resets the smoothing when an interval starts. Yeah. So then you aren't drugged down from what happened 10 seconds before. So I have that. And then in addition to that, I have a bottom part on my Hammerhead that shows gives me the next button for whatever I'm listening to from my phone, and back button and volume.
Gotcha.
That's what I have. It's that simple. I just care about hitting my power targets. That's it.
I understand that. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
All right, last one. You've raced a lot of places, and I would guess you have a lot that you're kind of like, man, that would be cool to go there. So that's what I want to hear is what's your favorite race that you've done? And what's the one that you haven't done that you want to go and do?
Yeah, Cape Epic is by far the coolest event I've done. So grateful to have been able to do that one. It is a massive investment to do it. Like it's a big thing in terms of time, but money. And that is by far and away the hardest race and hardest thing I've done on a bike, and the most epic feeling and the best organized event. And you're in Africa, and being in South Africa, it's one of the coolest topographies I've ever witnessed and been amongst. It's just incredible. Like, it is the coolest event anyone can do. And if anyone's listening to this and you want a bucket list thing, that is the bucket list item, in my opinion, if you're an off-road cyclist of any kind. But I really like racing that is dynamic and fun and interesting in some way. And I honestly, just this last weekend, because it's fresh in my mind, like, unfortunately, I had a wheel failure, but like Little Sugar, you had to be so locked in and so engaged the whole entire time. I was on cloud 9 in that race. Like, absolutely loved it. It was painful, super hard. But man, that race was so much fun. So I think if I had to pick like a dream spot to go other than Cape Epic, though, it'd be Swiss Epic. I've ridden in that region, like around Switzerland and Liechtenstein and Germany and in the Alps in that area on a road bike before. And, I mean, it's unreal. It's like it's fake. It's just too beautiful. The roads are too nice. The drivers are too kind. Like it's just, it's pretty amazing. So there's a multi-day road race, like stage race for amateurs that happens in Austria. Mm-hmm. It's not Otztaler Marathon. That's a different one. But I can't remember the name of it. But that one is high on my list. I really want to go and race road bikes there. That would be so cool. So
Right on. Well, Jonathan, this has been awesome and exciting, and really cool to hear your story and hear your passion, and just thank you for being here today, man.
Thank you, JP. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for hanging out with Jonathan and me today. Do me a favor, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone that you think might enjoy it. There are a lot of good guests coming up in the next few weeks and months. I am actually have the show booked out through January at this point, and most of those interviews have already taken place and are coming to you soon, and they are amazing. So make sure that you are following along on the audio platforms, or that you are subscribed on YouTube so you don't miss any of it. And of course, more important than anything you've heard all day, I want to remind you to remember that you are loved.